Like, it's one of those things where a lot of stuff.
Was it 6 strings or 5?
6 strings. 6 strings. A lot of things, but every now and again, you can definitely catch me playing a 5 too. It's like it's one of those things where a lot of things had changed rapidly on the death of one of my best friends, and also the loss of like a person I was really in love with. It became really difficult. So I went through a weird moment of being depressed for real. And
this was like this year. So you had some.
It started a couple years. This started a couple years back. And
so your friend died, and someone you were in love with died.
No, they didn't die. They just left me.
Oh, okay. Both of them, or the one passed away and one left you.
Yeah, and it was kind of consecutive, and it was like it started
grief
back
is
then.
The worst, man.
And I and when Mac passed, personally, it changed my life.
Mac, that's right.
Yeah,
Mac Miller, yeah,
and I think from that time period till now, a lot of changes drastically happened that would result in me physically changing. So I became vegan and I stopped drinking because it's basically like I feel like I had seen too much, you know.
Well, I mean, I noticed that with going through all the records, from Apocalypse forward, that when you talk from the first person, it's interesting. There's a style of songwriting that, like, I noticed a little more in jazz. Like, I was listening to Horace Silver's later albums where he incorporated, vocals and stuff.
Yeah.
He had brought in people. And, there is a type of earnest sort of presentation in some of that more experimental jazz singing where, no one's looking for hooks, but it's more philosophical and more straightforward, And it's not, it's not based on rhyme or anything other than ideas, right? So there's some of the stuff that I was listening to, and I was like, there were points in the work where I was thinking that, is he writing from the first person, or is he creating a character here? Because if he's writing from the first person, this guy's heading for a wall.
And so is life, right? There you go.
All right.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, no,
it seems like you're drinking too much, and you got a heavy heart, and you're too sensitive, and you get in trouble in Japan. That's what I got out of it.
That is quite literal, sir. That is me in real life. Yes.
Well, that's good that you pulled it together, man. But it's all in there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're pretty honest in your work. Once I get past the sort of, the music, which is great, but just listening to you. So it was because you worked with Mac Miller a bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of my best friends. Yeah.
Oh, he was?
Yeah.
It's hard, man. So did you see the struggle with drugs with him?
Yeah. I was there for the most part of that. Yeah.
And that was a wake-up call for you in the midst of the grief, where you realized that, even if you weren't doing the same drugs, that perhaps, you were increasing your odds of mortality.
Yeah. Yeah. I really hate that it took. I hate that it took that when I look back in hindsight, but. It's kind of one of those things where it's like something had to give,
right?
Right?
And you don't want it to be your mind or your life, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So
and it seems like
you either get the lesson or you get out of here,
for sure, one way or the other. Yeah,
yeah.
But well, I'm glad that you chose the art and the faith and the decision to change the life, find some hope.
Yeah, watch a lot of Star Wars.
So, but what about the work? I mean, is the album, it is what it is, the processing of that?
Yeah. It was like, I think it was like, somewhere between real life. It's like, again, like we were saying, sometimes stuff with me can be a bit literal. And that was me processing it. That was the change happening. And it just was kind of, it's like looking back on it, it was a bit traumatizing. It was a bit emotionally traumatizing, at least.
It's terrible, man. And it's like I went through something this year, just terrible. And there's nothing, when you lose somebody, and your heart breaks, both, like however you lose people, it's heartbreaking. And you get to a point, I'm older than you, where you're like, I don't know how much of this shit I can take. How much are we built to handle this? I don't know if I could do another one of these. And when it's death, then, because that's a surprising one. Then you're like, well, shit, there's no avoiding this, and we're all going to deal with this grief if we live long enough, one way or the other. Yeah. But if it's people leaving or you leaving, then it's like, man, I don't have to do this again. Like it's as my buddy Brendan said, you sort of earn your stripes as a human when you process this shit without destroying yourself.
There you go. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And it's it's never easy, but you don't realize that. You don't realize it's always like. You have to, it's going to, the consistent having to overcome and trying to be able to still walk straight after somebody hits you in the side of the head with a glass bottle. It's like, it's a lot. It's a lot, man. And
did the work help? When you were doing the music, did it help?
I remember it's always, music has always been a bit therapeutic and a bit like it becomes that. But I think in this moment, it was like overwhelmingly painful. So if I didn't have Flying Lotus there with me, and he's always been there with me, like I always talk about him, but it's the truth. If Flying Lotus wasn't there with me to help me see me through some of these moments, it just would be me tail spinning, and
he's a good friend, huh?
Yeah. It's genuinely like, beyond the music, even though like I always say, when I refer to him, I always say people can hear our relationship in the music, but beyond the music, it's one of these things where it's like, I don't know, he's just always, I feel like he's always cared for me, and
it's like, important when you're in the grief. Yeah,
in those moments, he's kind of, he would help me be able to stay standing straight when stuff would wallop me on the side of the head like that,
Right, yeah, to hold you up in a way, to get you, like, because, like, when my girlfriend passed away in May, I got a friend who, he just started calling me. And we talk every fucking night, man. Even now. Yeah. Like, right from the get-go. And it was just sort of like, it's grounding. Because if you're just left to sit in it and you don't got no love coming your way in the form of just a guy going like, what's going on? What'd you do? What'd you eat? What have you been thinking about? You read a thing? Whatever. Just to be like, get me, out of it, for a minute, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And then Flying Lotus, so like that guy's a genius. You're a genius. So like, you're swirling around in the possibilities. I imagine that outside the friendship, you're like, well, let's get into this thing. What's that thing you were working on?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Lotus can keep me focused, man. He really can.
What's that guy's background? Because I talked to Anderson .Paak about him, and then I went on a little spin with some of his work. And I knew, like, before I knew you guys were buddies or worked together, like a couple of days ago when I knew I was going to talk to you, I'm like, he's got to be with Flying Lotus because the groove is sort of similar where you guys are going.
Yeah.
So that you kind of inform each other, huh?
Yeah. That's how there's a moment where you see stuff in weird shades and gradients. I still remember vividly meeting him at South by Southwest. I remember what he was wearing. I remember his sentiment. I remember the necklace. I remember the shoes. I remember how hot it was. And it was like, it was one of the greatest moments, not knowing, like, unbeknownst to both of us. It was kind of like, it was one of those things like, man, we should hang out. And it was like, we should definitely hang out. And it just, like life changes and the different growth. And, did you
know his work before you met him?
Oh yeah. We both knew of each other's work I feel like I was a little bit more spotty back in the day. I didn't have albums. It wasn't something that was like solidified like that until I signed Brain Feeder Records. But me and he knew of my work by way of like the different things like Sa Ra Creative Partners and Erykah Badu and different people that I would work with. And he was, it's like we both knew that there was something that, you know, it was like, yeah, man. And I was a very big fan of his work, of course, this man is the sound of Los Angeles, you know? And,
it's like, it's interesting when I enter the world that you guys live in musically, because it's not really my world. And when I go in there, I realize a couple of things, like, well, this is amazing and deep and broad. And I where the fuck am I living? You know, like this is happening all the time. Okay. And every once in a while I walk into it, I'm like, holy shit, there's a whole other planet here. You know, and because all you guys kind of, you know, like the world of him, Flying Lotus, and you and Kamasi and Kendrick, and like there's a whole like amalgamation of different styles of music sort of constantly coming together among the crew that you guys are seem to be with. Yeah, no, at any given moment, you know, we'll get together and something comes of it. You know, it's just, I think that's just kind of a somewhere between, like, you know, that's like I don't want to say byproduct of the environment, but as compared to just it's somewhere between the actual relations and relationships that you have with each other. Yeah. And there's no way it's not going to translate musically. Right. You know, it's because music is the way we communicate. It's like there's a part of it where it's embedded in there. You know, it's like, you know, you're looking for a chance to, let me accentuate. You know, you're kind of like, okay, let me see if I can challenge this a bit, or like, let me you know, it's like we're constantly tinkering with each other's stuff. You know, and well, it's interesting to me, like you guys, like you and Kamasi, like when I first heard Epic, you know, I talked to him years ago. You know, he talked to me. And I heard Epic and I'm like, holy shit, man, the production on this is insane. And then I realized, you know, when I saw you play live, that like you're playing live. Like, you know, all that stuff is you're not doing tracks, you know? Yeah. So I'm like, holy shit, you know, he's got the choral group there, he's got the strings over here, he's got his dad, and he's got you and another guy on bass, there's 2 keyboards. Like, I'm like, what the fuck is happening? 2 drummers, you know, like, anyway. But you got to imagine that happening. Wait, you want to hear something funny? You got to imagine that in a small nightclub off of Crenshaw Boulevard, like a whole entire, without the orchestra and the strings, but the whole band hanging out and trying to play at like 5th Street Dick's in Lamert Park or a Doughboys Dust. We'd be hanging out the side of the club. Half the band would be outside the club. Oh my God! That would just be some of the funniest moments. You know, you got Cameron and Brandon playing, and me and Miles, and you know, Isaac and Terrence Kamasi. Everybody, we would just be playing, and then it was like, man, there doesn't really need to be an audience because we're the audience. So many of you. Yeah, half the club would be the band. A little small coffee house, like 15 band members. Yeah. Like, who's getting paid from this? Nobody. Yeah, they pay us in coffee and sandwiches. But that was the kind of the primal soup of the thing, right? I mean, that's where that was us. That's who we were, you know. But my point was, like, when I listened to Epic, I was like, this is groundbreaking, and it is. But then I listened to Mingus, and I'm like, oh well, that choral thing's sort of a precedent, you know, that's been around, right? So I started to put that stuff together, and then when I listen to you, like, there's definitely, like, you know, there's a Kamasi jazz, and then there's, you know, what you're doing is a little different in your own way, right? Your approach is more fusion oriented, where Kamasi's like pretty much he's traditional. Hard bop, bebop, like he's coming from a different place in a way. Yeah, absolutely. It's all embedded in there. You know, of course. Our first album together, we recorded as the Young Jazz Giants when we were kids. It was just, you know, it was kind of like we would try to, you know, incorporate everything that everybody was into, you know. And it's like there's a right. I'm playing upright on the album. I'm like there's a song called Steven's Song where it's kind of like, you know, it was me on electric bass, you know, and then there's like this giant drum solo at the end, and then Cameron, and then, you know, it's Cameron's insanely gifted piano playing. One person I feel like I don't talk about enough is Cameron Graves, to be honest with you. Cameron, and it's just growing up with a Cameron Graves was a really big deal. Between Cameron and Kamasi, they were always teaching me,
You know, like you're always showing
Yeah.
me how to play through